The diner was quiet in the early morning, with only a few regulars scattered at different tables. The sunlight streamed through the large windows, giving the small place a warm and comforting glow. She moved between tables with practiced ease, carrying plates and cups, greeting customers with a gentle smile that made everyone feel welcome. Working in this diner was not glamorous, but she had learned to find satisfaction in the small joys of the job. She liked seeing familiar faces and hearing the little stories people shared. She liked the rhythm of it all, even on the busiest days. Her shift began at 6 in the morning, and she had already been on her feet for nearly an hour, balancing trays filled with coffee, toast, and eggs. The diner was a place where people came to start their day, some to escape their own loneliness, others to grab a quick bite before heading to work. She knew most of the regulars by name and by the way they liked their coffee or eggs cooked. It was not just a job. It was a small community, and she was at the heart of it. One of the regulars caught her attention more than usual. He was a man who came in almost every morning, sitting at the same table near the corner window. He didn't talk much, and most days he simply nodded at her when she brought his coffee. Today, however, something was different. He looked tired in a way that went beyond just needing sleep. His shoulders slumped, and there was a heaviness in his eyes that made her pause for a moment. She carried his coffee over to him, careful not to spill a drop, and placed it gently on the table. "Morning," she said softly. Her voice was calm, meant to be a small comfort. He looked up, giving a faint smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Morning," he replied. She lingered for a moment, unsure if she should ask if he was okay. She decided to keep it simple. "Coffee's on the house today," she said. "Just for you." His eyes widened slightly, and he shook his head. "I couldn't," he said. "Please," she insisted. "Consider it a little kindness to start your day." He hesitated, then finally nodded. She moved away to attend to another table, but kept glancing back at him. Something about the way he held himself, quiet and withdrawn, tugged at her heart. She wondered what kind of struggles he might be facing. The diner had seen all kinds of people, each carrying burdens that no one else could see. She had her own struggles too, but there was a way to set them aside for a moment and offer a small bit of comfort to someone else. The morning moved slowly, with a steady stream of customers coming in for breakfast. She moved from table to table, taking orders, refilling coffee, and sharing a friendly word here and there. Each interaction was brief but meaningful. She noticed a child staring at the pancakes on a nearby table, eyes wide with anticipation. She smiled and offered him a small extra serving on the side. The child's face lit up with gratitude, and she felt a small spark of happiness. These small moments reminded her why she loved this work, even when it was exhausting. Back in the corner, the man sipped his coffee slowly, staring out the window. Something about his presence felt heavier than usual. She found herself thinking about him more than any other customer that morning. There was a story behind those tired eyes, and she wished she could help. She finished her current table and made her way back to him. "Can I get you anything else?" she asked gently. He shook his head. "No, thank you. Just coffee is enough." She nodded but stayed nearby, wiping down a table close to his. "You know," she said lightly, "sometimes talking to someone can make things feel a little lighter." He looked at her, surprised. There was a flicker of curiosity in his eyes, as if he wasn't used to anyone noticing him in that way. "I don't know," he said quietly. "That's okay," she replied. "Just know I'm here if you ever want to share." He nodded again, and she went back to her tasks, though she couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to his story. The morning passed, and the diner gradually filled with more customers. She moved seamlessly through her tasks, yet her mind kept returning to him. She thought about the weight people carry silently, and how small acts of kindness, even as simple as a free cup of coffee or a gentle conversation, could make a difference. Around mid-morning, a few more regulars arrived. She greeted them warmly, remembering their usual orders without needing to write anything down. There was a sense of rhythm in the diner, a flow that was comforting in its predictability. She liked the way each day brought small surprises, moments of joy tucked between the routine tasks. A laugh shared with a customer here, a heartfelt thank you there. These were the little sparks that kept her going. She glanced again at the man in the corner. He was still quiet, but there was a slight change in his posture, a small easing of tension that hadn't been there before. She wondered if the coffee or her brief words had helped, even just a little. The thought warmed her heart. She knew she couldn't solve all the problems in the world, but maybe, just maybe, she could make a tiny difference in someone's day. The morning rush began to fade, leaving a calmer hum in the diner. She wiped down the counters, arranged the menus neatly, and prepared for the lunch crowd. She moved with purpose, yet there was a gentle care in everything she did. Each plate set down, each cup filled, each smile shared was a thread in the quiet tapestry of human connection she was weaving. She looked back at the man once more. He seemed a bit more relaxed now, sipping his coffee with a faint smile that seemed almost genuine. She felt a sense of quiet satisfaction. It was a small victory, nothing grand, but it mattered. Small kindnesses often went unnoticed, but they planted seeds that could grow into something meaningful. As she continued her work, she thought about how ordinary days could hold extraordinary moments. She didn't know what challenges the man faced or what the rest of his day would bring, but she had offered a moment of care, and that was enough for now. In a world that often felt rushed and indifferent, these simple human connections were precious. The clock ticked on, the sun climbing higher in the sky. The diner hummed with life, a small haven of warmth and friendliness. She moved through the space with grace, aware of the people around her, noticing the little things that made each person unique. And in the corner, the man sat quietly, sipping his coffee, perhaps feeling, even if just slightly, that someone cared. That thought lingered with her as she went about her day, a quiet reminder that sometimes the smallest gestures could touch hearts in ways that nothing else could. The diner had quieted down after the morning rush, leaving her with a few tables scattered with customers quietly eating or reading. She moved carefully between them, making sure everyone had what they needed, refilling cups, clearing plates, and offering a warm smile. Even in the calm, her mind kept drifting back to the man in the corner, the one who seemed weighed down by life. She didn't know his story, but there was something about him that drew her attention. He wasn't just a customer. He seemed like someone who needed a small spark of hope. Today he seemed more restless than usual. He sipped his coffee slowly, staring out of the window, but his hand shook slightly as he held the cup. She noticed the little signs, the worn-out shoes, the frayed coat, the way he avoided looking at anyone else. She wondered what challenges he faced, what worries kept him awake at night. A sense of empathy rose within her, urging her to do more than just serve him food and coffee. She approached his table with a gentle voice, careful not to startle him. "Can I get you anything else? Maybe a sandwich or some fruit?" "It's on the house today," she offered. Her words were casual but filled with warmth. He looked up at her, eyes tired but searching, as if he wasn't used to someone showing such concern. He shook his head slowly, almost as if he had forgotten how it felt to be offered help without strings attached. "Are you sure?" she asked softly. "I just want to make your morning a little easier." He hesitated and finally nodded. She smiled, sensing a small breakthrough. She went to the counter and prepared a simple meal, a sandwich and some fruit, arranging it carefully on a plate. When she brought it to his table, he looked genuinely surprised. "I didn't expect this," he said quietly, almost ashamed. "You don't have to expect anything," she replied. "Consider it a small kindness. That's all." He looked at her, eyes searching hers, trying to understand her motives. There was no judgment, no expectation, just simple human care. He took a small bite of the sandwich, then another, and gradually began to relax. She stayed nearby, cleaning a table close to him, not wanting to intrude but wanting him to feel supported. There was a strange comfort in simply being present for someone, in letting them know that someone noticed and cared. Over the next few days, she continued this quiet routine. She checked in on him, offered him small meals, and shared a few words of encouragement. She didn't push him to talk about his problems, but she created a safe space for him to open up if he wanted. Slowly, he started to share pieces of his life. He spoke about losing a job, the weight of bills piling up, and feeling like he had nowhere to turn. His voice was soft, almost apologetic, as if he were embarrassed to reveal his struggles. But she listened without judgment, nodding, offering words of comfort. She realized that small gestures could make a difference. A meal, a kind word, a smile. They could remind someone that they were not invisible. She had helped people before in different ways, but something about his situation touched her deeply. She didn't think about recognition or reward. Her concern was purely human. It was enough to see him eat without rushing, to see a flicker of hope in his eyes, and to know that her actions mattered in some way. One afternoon, as she cleared a table near the counter, he approached her. He looked nervous, hesitant, but determined. "I just wanted to say thank you," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "You've been really kind to me, more than I expected from anyone." She smiled warmly. "You don't need to thank me, I just wanted to help, that's all." He shook his head. "No, really. Your kindness, it means a lot. I didn't think anyone would notice. I didn't think anyone would care." Her heart softened. She had helped him, yes, but she had not expected such gratitude. It reminded her that the impact of small gestures often went deeper than words could express. She told him that he was capable, that things could get better, and that sometimes life gave second chances in ways we didn't always anticipate. He nodded, taking her words to heart. Over the next few weeks, their connection deepened. She would share a joke, a small story from her life, or a piece of advice when he asked. He began to open up more, talking about past mistakes, lost opportunities, and the loneliness he carried. She didn't judge him, didn't offer unsolicited advice, but created a safe space where he could breathe and be honest about his struggles. At the same time, she noticed subtle changes in him. His posture improved slightly, his eyes looked less tired, and he even began to smile at small things again. The diner, once just a place to eat, became a little sanctuary where he could find a moment of peace. She realized that kindness wasn't always about grand gestures. Sometimes it was the consistency, the small, repeated acts that built trust and hope. One rainy morning, as she handed him his coffee, he said quietly, "You've really helped me, more than you know." He looked down at his cup, a mix of gratitude and vulnerability in his eyes. She placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder, a simple gesture that carried more warmth than words could. "I'm glad," she said softly. Sometimes that's all anyone needs, a little reminder that someone cares. The diner bustled around them, but in that small corner there was a quiet intimacy, a connection built on empathy and understanding. It was not a dramatic story, not a heroic act, just the gentle unfolding of trust and compassion. And yet, it mattered. It mattered more than either of them could have known at that moment. Through these simple daily interactions, she discovered the power of presence. She didn't have money to give, she didn't have solutions to all his problems, but she had time, attention, and genuine care. And sometimes, that was enough to start changing someone's outlook on life. She also reflected on herself, noticing how these interactions shaped her own perspective. Working in a diner was often tiring and repetitive, but moments like these brought purpose and meaning. The world could be harsh, but small acts of kindness, offered freely, could soften its edges. Her days, once routine, were now imbued with a quiet sense of purpose, fueled by the small but significant change she was witnessing in someone's life. By the end of the week, the man was noticeably brighter. He still faced challenges, of course, but he carried himself with a slightly more confident air. She noticed it, and it warmed her heart. The bond they shared was simple yet profound, built on trust, care, and the quiet knowledge that someone was there for him, unconditionally. She understood then that her efforts weren't just helping him. They were a reminder to her as well that kindness in any form had the power to heal. One evening, as she closed the diner, she thought about the journey so far. She had helped a stranger simply by noticing, by caring, by being present, by being. And in doing so, she had learned something about herself and about humanity. It wasn't about recognition or reward. It was about connection. It was about offering warmth in a cold world, and in return, seeing a light return to someone's eyes. She wiped down the counters, stacked the chairs, and took a moment to reflect. The man had become more than just a customer. He was a testament to the difference one person's kindness could make. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but she knew that she would continue to offer what she could: time, attention, and a heart willing to care. Sometimes, she realized, that was enough to change the course of someone's life in ways no one could predict. Days turned into weeks, and their small, quiet routine continued. She still worked long shifts, moving from table to table, but now there was an added sense of purpose in her actions. Each time she approached the man in the corner, there was a subtle change in his demeanor. A lighter step, a small smile, a flicker of hope that hadn't been there before. It wasn't dramatic, and it wasn't sudden, but it was noticeable. That small progress reminded her why she kept going, why she offered her kindness without expecting anything in return. She began to notice the little things that suggested he was slowly regaining some stability. He started to order breakfast, without hesitation, sometimes even chatting with the other regulars. He laughed quietly at her jokes and occasionally shared stories from his past. She listened with care, nodding, offering support when he needed it, and simply holding space when he didn't. Their interactions were simple, but they were meaningful, forming a bond built on trust and patience. One afternoon, during a quieter moment in the diner, she noticed him staring out of the window with a distant look in his eyes. Something seemed to weigh on him again. She approached cautiously, not wanting to intrude, but wanting to offer comfort. "Is everything okay?" she asked softly. He hesitated, then sighed. "It's just, sometimes it feels like no matter what I do, things don't get better," he said. There was vulnerability in his voice, a raw honesty that only comes when someone trusts another completely. She nodded, understanding the weight of his words. "I know it feels that way sometimes," she said, "but small steps matter. Even the little things you do for yourself or others count, even if they seem insignificant." He looked at her, a glimmer of gratitude in his eyes. "You really mean that," he said. There was a pause, and then he added almost quietly, "Thank you for caring." She smiled. "It's my pleasure. Just know that someone believes in you. That's all I can offer, and sometimes it's more than enough." Over the next few days, she continued to help him in small ways, offering meals, listening, and sometimes just sitting near him while he ate. She didn't push him to share more than he wanted, but she made sure he felt seen and valued. There were moments when she thought about how fragile life could be, how easy it was to feel invisible and lost. Her presence, though small, seemed to make a difference. She began to realize that helping someone didn't always require grand gestures. Sometimes consistency, patience, and genuine care were the most powerful tools. One day, he came in looking particularly weary. His coat was worn and there was a noticeable tension in his shoulders. She approached his table with concern. "Rough day?" she asked gently. He nodded. "It's been hard. Bills, job applications. It never ends." He paused, looking down at his hands. "I just don't know if I can keep going sometimes." Her heart ached for him. She sat across from him for a moment, careful to give him her full attention. "I understand. Life can be overwhelming, and it's okay to feel tired. But you're not alone in this. You have people who care, people who believe in you, even if it's just me sitting here right now. That matters." He looked at her, eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I don't know why you care so much about someone you barely know," he said softly. She shrugged lightly, smiling. "Sometimes people just need someone to notice them, to care for them without expecting anything in return. That's all it is." He nodded, swallowing hard, and a small smile appeared on his face. It was the kind of smile that carried relief, a release of some of the weight he had been carrying. She felt a quiet joy in seeing it, knowing that her actions, however simple, had made a difference. Over the following weeks, their bond deepened. She started leaving little notes with his meals, words of encouragement or small reminders to take care of himself. Sometimes she would slip an extra piece of fruit or a small snack onto his plate. These gestures were subtle, but he noticed. He began to look forward to her shifts, the warmth of her presence a small anchor in his otherwise uncertain days. She, in turn, felt fulfilled in ways she hadn't anticipated. Her days were still long and tiring, but they were also rich with meaning. Other regulars in the diner began to notice the quiet connection between the two of them. Some would comment on how he seemed brighter, more engaged, and how she always seemed to know exactly what he needed. She didn't mind the attention. She simply continued to do what felt right, helping in small ways, giving what she could, and expecting nothing in return. There was an unspoken understanding between her and the man. No one else needed to know the details of their interactions, but the impact was real and significant. One rainy morning, as the diner filled with the soft hum of chatter and clinking dishes, the man approached her at the counter. He held an envelope in his hands, his expression nervous but determined. She looked at him, curious but cautious. I wanted to give you this," he said quietly. "You've helped me more than I can ever explain. You've been there when I needed someone, when I felt like no one else cared. I don't have a way to repay you fully, but I want you to have this." She blinked in surprise, taken aback by his gesture. She opened the envelope carefully and discovered a check for $10,000. Her eyes widened and she looked up at him in disbelief. I can't accept this," she stammered. "You don't have to give me anything," he shook his head, his voice firm but gentle. "I insist. You've shown me what kindness really means, and I want to show you my gratitude. You didn't help me for money or reward, but I want to make sure you know how much your actions meant to me." Tears welled up in her eyes, and she struggled to find words. I just did what felt right," she said softly. "I never expected anything in return." He smiled, a genuine smile that reflected relief and gratitude. "And that's why it matters so much. But I hope this can help you, even a little. You deserve it." For a moment, the diner seemed to fall silent around them. The hum of conversation and clinking dishes faded into the background as the weight of the moment settled in. She realized that her small acts of care, her simple gestures of kindness, had not only helped him but had now come back to her in a way she never imagined. It wasn't just the money. It was the acknowledgement of the human connection, the recognition that caring for someone could have profound consequences. She thanked him, her voice shaking with emotion. He smiled again, a quiet understanding passing between them. No words could fully capture what had been shared, what had been given and received. It was a reminder that true generosity and empathy often came back to us in ways we couldn't predict. And for her, it was a moment of validation, a reassurance that her efforts, no matter how small or unnoticed by others, had real impact. As the man left the diner that day, she watched him go with a mixture of relief, joy, and wonder. Her life, which had been ordinary and routine, had been touched by an extraordinary moment. And yet she knew that the true reward was not the check in her hands, but the realization that simple, consistent acts of kindness could change lives in ways we often fail to anticipate. She looked around the diner, at the familiar faces, at the steady hum of life, and felt a deep sense of gratitude. Her journey of helping someone in need had transformed her own perspective. It had shown her that empathy, patience, and human connection were powerful beyond measure, capable of bringing light into lives clouded by hardship. And as she wiped down the counter and prepared for the next day, she carried with her a renewed sense of purpose, ready to continue offering kindness, understanding, and care to anyone who needed it, one small gesture at a time. It was an ordinary morning, with the soft hum of the diner filling the space. She moved between tables, refilling coffee, clearing plates, and exchanging light conversations with regular customers. Despite the rhythm of her day, there was a quiet anticipation in the air, though she did not yet realize it. She had grown accustomed to the small routines she shared with the man in the corner, the simple gestures that had built a bond over the weeks. Today, however, something felt different. He arrived as usual, carrying himself with a quiet determination. There was a spark in his eyes she hadn't seen before, a certain energy that suggested change. She greeted him with a warm smile, and he returned it, though there was a subtle nervousness in his posture. She placed his coffee on the table and waited, sensing that he wanted to say something important. After a few moments of silence, he looked up at her and spoke in a tone that was serious but calm. "I have something I need to tell you," he said. She paused, a mixture of curiosity and concern in her gaze. "I think it's time you knew the truth about who I am." She raised an eyebrow, intrigued but cautious. "What do you mean?" she asked softly, her voice steady but curious. He took a deep breath, as if preparing himself for a weighty confession. "I'm not exactly the person you think I am. I haven't been completely honest with anyone about my situation. I've been going through a lot, yes, but there's more to my story." He hesitated, searching her face for a reaction. "I'm not just struggling. I recently came into a financial situation that changed everything. I have more resources than I let on, but I've been learning what really matters, and one of the most important things I realized is how much your kindness has affected me." She blinked, trying to process his words. Her heart raced, but not out of excitement. Instead, it was a mixture of disbelief, curiosity, and cautious hope. "I don't understand," she said softly. "Are you saying—" He nodded, reaching into his coat pocket and pulling out a small envelope. "I wanted to surprise you. You've been so selfless, helping me without asking for anything in return, showing genuine care when no one else noticed. I want to show you my gratitude in a way that can really make a difference for you." Her hands trembled slightly as she took the envelope. The words were almost lost in the whirlwind of her emotions. She opened it slowly, and her eyes widened in shock when she saw what was inside, a check for $10,000. She could hardly believe it. She stared at the numbers, then looked up at him, searching his eyes for a sign that this wasn't real. "It's real," he said gently. "You helped me when I was at my lowest. You didn't ask for anything and you didn't judge me. That means more than I can explain. I want you to have this, not as repayment, but as a gift of gratitude. Your kindness deserves recognition, and I hope this helps you in ways you've needed." Tears welled up in her eyes, a mix of shock, joy, and humility. She shook her head, unable to speak for a moment. Finally, she found her voice. I didn't do this for money. I just wanted to help. That's all I wanted." "I know," he replied, his voice calm and sincere, "and that's why it matters so much. You didn't expect anything, and yet your actions have made a huge impact on my life. Now I want to make a positive impact on yours." She sat down across from him, still holding the envelope, her mind racing. It was overwhelming. Her thoughts were a mixture of disbelief, gratitude, and reflection on everything that had happened. The small acts of care, the meals, the conversations, the quiet support she had given. They had all led to this moment, an unexpected but profoundly moving turn of events. As she tried to calm herself, she looked at him with a deep sense of appreciation. "I can't believe this," she whispered. "I never imagined anything like this would happen." He smiled, a gentle, reassuring expression. "Sometimes life surprises us. Your kindness has reminded me of what really matters, and I wanted to honor that. I wanted to show you that even small gestures can have big effects, and that the impact of caring for someone truly goes both ways." The diner around them continued its quiet rhythm, but in that corner, time seemed to pause. The usual clatter of dishes and hum of conversations faded as they shared this extraordinary moment of connection. She thought about all the mornings she had spent serving him coffee, all the small acts of care she had given, and how those had accumulated into something far more meaningful than she had ever imagined. Over the next few minutes, they talked quietly, reflecting on the journey they had shared. He spoke of his struggles, the mistakes he had made, and the loneliness he had felt. She shared her own thoughts and feelings, not about her personal life in detail, but about the lessons she had learned from helping him and from observing the impact of genuine kindness. They laughed softly, sometimes paused in silence, allowing the weight of the moment to settle between them. She realized that the money, though significant, was not the most important part. It was the acknowledgement, the recognition that her small acts of care had meaning, that they had changed someone's life in profound ways. It was proof that empathy and kindness were never wasted, even when it seemed like they went unnoticed. The man leaned back in his chair, watching her reaction. "You might think you didn't do much, but what you did matters more than you know. I've learned so much from you about compassion, patience, and hope, and I wanted to make sure you knew how much it meant." She nodded slowly, tears spilling over now. "It's more than I could have ever expected. I didn't do it for this, and I don't know if I ever could have imagined it, but thank you, truly." He smiled again, a look of quiet relief in his eyes. "You've earned it in every way that counts." In the days that followed, the story of the unexpected gift lingered in her mind. She felt a mixture of amazement and humility, thinking about how life could bring such surprises. She reflected on the weeks of small interactions, of patient listening, of genuine care, and realized that they had all led to this extraordinary moment. The world, often harsh and unpredictable, had returned her kindness in a way that exceeded her wildest imagination. Even with the unexpected gift, she continued her work at the diner with the same dedication. She served customers, refilled coffee, and cleaned tables, but her heart carried a deeper sense of purpose. She had witnessed firsthand how small acts of empathy could change someone's outlook, and now she had seen how those acts could ripple back in ways beyond expectation. She felt more connected to the world around her, more attuned to the power of kindness and the value of human connection. She also noticed a subtle change in the man. He seemed lighter, more confident, and genuinely happier. The bond they had formed over weeks of quiet support had grown into something lasting, built on trust, respect, and mutual understanding. It was a reminder that acts of care were not just one-sided. They could transform both the giver and the receiver. As she reflected on the experience, she understood a powerful truth. Life often rewards selflessness in ways that can't be predicted. The money was extraordinary, yes, but it was the acknowledgement, the recognition of her compassion, and the affirmation of her values that made the moment truly unforgettable. It was a lesson in hope, in human connection, and in the enduring impact of simple, consistent kindness. The diner continued its rhythm, the morning crowd moving in and out, unaware of the life-changing moment that had just occurred. She moved through the space with grace and ease, still attentive to the needs of her customers, but carrying within her a newfound sense of fulfillment. The story of the man she had helped, the bond they had formed, and the unexpected gift she had received became a quiet source of inspiration. It reminded her that even the smallest gestures, offered sincerely, could create waves far beyond what anyone could imagine. And as she prepared for the next day, she carried with her a simple but profound understanding. Kindness, patience, and empathy are never wasted. The acts of caring that she had offered so freely had transformed lives, both his and hers, and had left an indelible mark on her heart. The morning sun streamed through the windows, casting light across the diner, and she felt a quiet gratitude for the journey that had led her to this extraordinary, life-affirming moment. Life after that morning was different in subtle but powerful ways. She returned to her routine at the diner, serving customers with the same warmth and attention, but now there was a quiet sense of hope in her heart. The gift she had received was not just about the money, it was about acknowledgement, validation, and the proof that small acts of kindness could ripple out and come back in ways one could never predict. She used the money wisely, starting by addressing long-standing needs in her own life. Bills were paid, debts were settled, and some personal goals she had set aside for years were finally within reach. But more than the practical benefits, she felt an emotional freedom she had never experienced before. It was a relief to know that her efforts, her small gestures of care, had value not just to her but to someone else who had been deeply affected by them. The diner became more than just a workplace. It was a place of reflection, growth, and connection. She noticed the way the regulars responded to her with a little more warmth, perhaps sensing a newfound confidence and peace within her. Even the man who had given her the gift seemed transformed. He walked with a steadier step, laughed more freely, and engaged with others in ways that suggested his outlook on life had changed. Their bond, built on weeks of mutual respect and care, continued quietly, an unspoken understanding between two people whose lives had been touched by kindness. She began to see the ripple effect of her actions in ways she had never imagined. A customer who once came in somber now smiled as she handed over his usual order. A mother with a small child found extra patience and a kind word, lightening her burden for a moment. She realized that the warmth she had offered to one person had spread beyond just that connection. Small gestures, repeated consistently, had a way of multiplying, reaching people who might never even know the origin. Her confidence in her ability to make a difference grew, not because she had received a monetary reward, but because she had witnessed the tangible impact of her empathy. She understood that helping someone was not always about grand actions, but about presence, attention, and genuine care. She had learned that even when someone appeared closed off or distant, offering small, consistent support could make a profound difference over time. As the weeks went on, she reflected often on the journey she had shared with the man in the corner. She remembered his quiet struggles, the moments of doubt and vulnerability, and the slow but steady changes she had observed. She understood now that life was often a series of small steps, and that even the tiniest gestures could lead to remarkable outcomes. The $10,000 gift was a symbol, yes, but it was also a reminder that human connections carried a value far beyond money. She found herself more attentive, more patient, and more understanding with everyone she encountered. Her interactions with customers became deeper, more mindful, as if she could sense the unspoken needs of those around her. The diner became a microcosm of community and compassion, and she played a central role in cultivating that atmosphere. It was not a role she had sought, but one she embraced wholeheartedly. The man continued to visit, their conversations now lighter, filled with laughter and stories of small victories and progress. They shared updates on life, on challenges overcome, and on lessons learned. The bond they had formed was no longer just about need and support. It had evolved into genuine friendship, built on shared experience, trust, and mutual respect. She felt grateful not only for the gift he had given, but for the opportunity to witness his transformation and to be part of a story of resilience and hope. She also realized that this experience had changed the way she saw herself. She understood the power of her own actions, the impact of empathy, and the importance of patience and persistence. She no longer viewed her work at the diner as mundane or routine. It was a platform for connection, understanding, and meaningful human interaction. Each customer represented an opportunity to offer kindness, to make a small but lasting difference in someone's life. Her friends and family noticed a subtle but profound change in her demeanor. She carried herself with a quiet confidence, a calm assurance that came from knowing she had contributed something meaningful to the world. She spoke of the experience with humility, careful to focus on the lessons of empathy, patience, and kindness, rather than the monetary gift. Her story became a quiet inspiration to those around her, showing that small, consistent acts of care could lead to extraordinary outcomes. The diner itself seemed to take on a new energy. Regulars who had once been distant or reserved began to engage more, inspired by the kindness and attentiveness she exhibited. She noticed small shifts in the atmosphere, a friendlier word here, a smile there, a sense of community growing quietly but steadily. She understood that the ripple effect of her actions was ongoing, reaching people she might never meet, spreading the impact of genuine human connection. She continued to help the man in small ways, though now it was less about immediate need and more about shared friendship and support. They celebrated small victories together, whether it was a successful job application, a completed project, or simply a day when the world felt a little lighter. Their bond remained a testament to the power of empathy and the quiet transformation that occurs when someone is seen, heard, and cared for without expectation. As time went on, she also began to think about ways to extend her kindness beyond the diner. The experience had opened her eyes to the broader potential of her actions. She considered volunteering, helping neighbors, and finding other opportunities to offer support to those in need. The lessons she had learned about human connection, patience, and empathy were not confined to one person. They could be shared and multiplied in countless ways. The story of the $10,000 gift, though extraordinary, was only part of the larger lesson. What mattered most was the journey, the connection, and the recognition that even the smallest acts of care could have life-changing consequences. She carried this understanding with her in every interaction, every shift, every conversation. It became a guiding principle, a quiet but powerful force shaping her daily life. She also realized that true generosity is never about expecting something in return. The man's gift, while generous and life-changing, was a reflection of the impact she had already made, not a motivation for her actions. She had learned that empathy, consistency, and genuine concern for others are rewards in themselves, and that the universe has a way of returning them in forms that may surprise us. Through all of this, she remained humble, grounded, and deeply human. She understood that life is unpredictable, that challenges come and go, and that people often carry hidden burdens. Her experience had taught her to look beyond appearances, to notice the unspoken struggles, and to offer support in ways that were meaningful, patient, and sincere. She carried this wisdom with her every day, quietly shaping her actions and her perspective. As she closed the diner each evening, she often reflected on the journey she had taken. From the small act of noticing a struggling man in a corner to the profound acknowledgement she had received, the experience had transformed her understanding of kindness, human connection, and the ripple effect of empathy. She felt a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing that her actions had mattered, that her care had been noticed, and that she had contributed to a story of hope, transformation, and gratitude. In the end, the $10,000 gift was not just a monetary surprise, it was a symbol of what happens when compassion meets opportunity. It was proof that even small, seemingly ordinary gestures can lead to extraordinary outcomes. She continued her work at the diner with renewed purpose, knowing that her actions had value, that her empathy mattered, and that the connections she fostered could change lives in ways that were both subtle and profound. She moved forward with a quiet confidence, ready to continue offering kindness wherever she could, inspired by the knowledge that her small acts had the power to create ripples of positive change. Life continued as it always does, but now she carried with her a deeper understanding of human connection, the importance of empathy, and the lasting impact of simply caring for someone in need. And in the quiet moments she would smile, remembering how a single act of kindness had transformed not just one life, but many, including her own.